Hi everyone, can you hear me? Can you write in the messenger whether you can hear me? As always, you guys are muted, but I will ask you some questions which you can then answer yourselves on a piece of paper, or if I ask everyone, you can then pop it in the messenger. So welcome everyone to this online classroom, and we are today looking at the heart. Good. Okay, so the heart. Now, the heart is an extremely important organ within the body, and crucially, its main job is to pump blood. Oh, I'm jumping in, and Martin's making sure that my screen is shared. I always do this. So, the primary function of the heart is to pump blood. Now, what's being carried in that blood that's so important? Well, that's oxygen. So really, the heart is acting as a pump in order to help deliver oxygen around the body. Now, where does that oxygen enter the body? It enters at another very important organ called the lungs. So you've got to think that the heart and the lungs are both very important. They are connected to each other by the fact that the lungs are the way in which we bring oxygen into the body, and the heart is the way in which that oxygen gets pumped around the body to various respiring cells. So in terms of the structure of the heart, now people find this, okay, Martin's sorting the audio. So in terms of understanding the structure of the heart, I'm going to do what I consider to be the easiest way of teaching this, which is to show it as a box, and we will look at a more complicated diagram of the heart. But if you can understand how we build it from scratch, you can then learn how to label the heart more easily in the future, because with my teaching, I'm just trying to help you see the easy way of doing something so you can score super highly in the exam. So I'm just going to start by drawing a box, and it has 4 compartments. And as you can see, the bottom 2 compartments are bigger than the top 2. Now, crucially with the heart, there's a left and right side of the heart, but you've got to imagine it so that it's in your body. So actually, it's the other way around to how it would look on a page. And that means that this side is actually the right side of the heart, and this side is the left. And so if I was to pick up my iPad and pop it in front of my body, I would see that indeed the left would appear on the right, and the right would appear on the left. Is everything okay? So next up, we need to label the chambers of the heart. I hope you can see from the 4 compartments, the 4 rooms, that we have 4 main chambers. So the top 2 chambers are known as atria, which I think in Latin means the entrance hall, so that makes sense. So we have the right atria and the left atria, or atrium. And then the bottom 2 compartments are known as ventricles. So we have the right ventricle and the left ventricle. Okay, so there's our heart. We have our 4 chambers, but now we need to talk about how that blood is supplied to the heart and how it's taken away. So crucially, let's remember that carrying blood away from the heart, the 2 A's go together, so arteries carry blood away. Always remember that the 2 A's go together. And in terms of how blood flows through the heart, it enters at the atria. So there are 2 vessels bringing blood into the atria and 2 bringing it away. And so we know that the vessels carrying blood away from the heart will be the arteries. The next thing to mention is that the heart is, although it's in 4 chambers, it's effectively split into 2 halves. And I'm just going to use red to show this. So the left side is really what we describe as being the oxygenated side. So blood flowing through the left side of the heart will be oxygenated. Blood flowing through the right side of the heart is deoxygenated. And I'm going to explain that in more detail further on in the video. But crucially, the left side of the heart is oxygenated. So now let's start labeling some of these vessels. Well, I've already told you that blood being carried away. Gray, do you mind not? Okay, please don't comment because everyone's doing this for themselves, so it's not helpful to everyone else if you comment all the time. Okay, so if we look at the left side of the heart, now we know that the blood vessel carrying blood away is going to be an artery. Now it needs naming, and the main artery name is the aorta. So the aorta is the artery carrying oxygenated blood away from the left ventricle. So where does that oxygenated blood go? Well, it's going to go all around the body so that it can deliver that oxygen to the respiring cells. And that's why the aorta is such a huge vessel. It's hugely responsible for delivering oxygenated blood around the body. But where did that oxygen come from? Well, we know that it came from the lungs. So imagine, therefore, that the blood entering at the left atria, we already know, because we're talking about the left side, that we're talking about oxygenated blood. So where's it come from? Well, where it could be oxygenated. So it's come from the lungs. Now, it's really important that you understand that the word pulmonary means relating to the lungs. And so we know that the vessels coming into the heart are the veins. So by definition, therefore, what is the name of the vessel supplying the left atria? Well, it's the pulmonary vein. Okay, so it's carrying oxygenated blood away from the lungs and it's transporting it into the left atria. So we've got a very nice situation here where our oxygenated blood is passing from the pulmonary vein into the left atria. The wall of the heart is extremely muscular, so the wall of the left atria contracts, forcing that blood into the left ventricle and then out of the aorta. Because it's so essential that the blood flows downwards, we have some valves. Notice that these exist in the walls of the atria, so around about here, and we call them atrioventricular valves because they exist between the atrium and the ventricle. Biology is nice, it makes sense. If you're feeling fancy, you can also call these the bicuspid valves, but there's nothing wrong with calling them what they are, the atrioventricular valves. What do? They prevent the backflow of blood. So now I'm going to do a bit of tidying up because my diagram's looking a bit messy. So crucially, we can see the pulmonary vein supplying the left atria contracting, forcing oxygenated blood into the left ventricle, which then forces blood into the aorta, so it can go around the body delivering oxygenated oxygen everywhere. However, because of respiration, we know that that blood is going to be depleted of oxygen. It's not going to have any oxygen in it anymore. And we also know that that blood is going to be full of carbon dioxide. So what do we need to do? Well, we need a way of delivering that blood to the lungs. But unfortunately, because think about how tall we are, that blood's got to move against gravity. So we need a second pumping by the heart in order to maneuver that blood back to the lungs, which is why the blood has to return to the heart. And so the blood returns into the right atria. What do we know about it? Well, we know it's going to be coming in via the veins. And what's the name of the main vein? It's the vena cava. So notice it's going to be low in oxygen, high in carbon dioxide. So the vena cava is simply a way of returning deoxygenated blood to the heart. So that deoxygenated blood enters the right atria. We have another contraction forcing blood into the right ventricle. And then I've already told you that arteries carry blood away from the heart. Notice, what will the name of this artery be? Well, we know that that blood needs to go back to the lungs in order to be oxygenated. So that is the pulmonary artery. So hopefully you can see that this is a cycle We call this a double circulatory system. It's just a technical way of saying that the blood flows twice into the heart for every once it travels around the body. I mean, technically, everyone's heart will be different in size depending on their size. So in terms of how much work, it's probably very similar, because taller people should have larger hearts. I mean, there are variations. And if my friend is like 6'8", so I imagine his heart is working pretty hard to return the blood from his toes all the way back up. But generally speaking, people's heart sizes are proportional to their height and their body size. Just to mention that we have more valves sitting between the wall of the right atria and the right ventricle. Again, these are atrioventricular valves. Again, they prevent the backflow of blood. And if you want to be fancy, you can call them tricuspid valves. Try and remember that the R is for the right side. Someone taught me that a few years ago, and it's really helped me remember. One other thing that exams like to point out is, okay, I've only drawn a box here, but we've got a thicker wall, thicker muscular wall on the left ventricle side when compared with the right ventricle side. Why is that? Well, look at where the blood is being pumped to. With the left ventricle, we're forcing blood around the body, so literally everywhere. With the right ventricle, we're just forcing blood to the lungs. If you think about it, your heart and your lungs are extremely close, so we don't need to build up the same amount of pressure. So we're going to say the wall is thicker on the left ventricle as blood has to be pumped further and at high pressure. And as I said, there's complete separation between the left and right side, and that's to ensure that there's no mixing of oxygenated and deoxygenated blood. And as Amna has said, we call this the septum, the separation, but I haven't seen a question particularly on IGCSE or GCSE that asks you to name that. Okay, everyone let me know if you're ready to move on, and we'll look at an actual diagram of the heart so we can see how this transfers. Okay, so here is probably a more accurate, well, definitely more accurate version of the heart, but it's nothing to panic about as long as we follow the same rules as before. And it's good to practice drawing the box diagram to get yourselves used to this. So let's start by labeling the left and right side. Remember, it's the opposite to what you think. So we have the left atrium here, the left ventricle, the right atrium, and the right ventricle. Now let's consider the way in which the blood is flowing. So I'm just going to draw some arrows. And that's to help us understand the blood flow. Okay, so let's work out therefore which vessels are supplying which chamber. So we're going to start with the oxygenated side. We know that the blood enters at the atrium, the left atrium, and we know that the blood enters via a vein. That means that this vessel here will therefore, because it's coming from the lungs, will be the pulmonary vein. The left atrium contracts, forcing blood into the left ventricle. The left ventricle contracts, forcing blood out of an artery. Remember, that's the main artery. It has this very characteristic arch shape. So this is actually the aorta. It always looks like this. It's huge. It has lots of vessels coming off it. So we've already labeled all the chambers and 2 of the vessels already. So that oxygenated blood has been delivered around the body. We know that it needs to return to the heart. It returns to the heart in a vein. The main vein is the vena cava. And then that blood flowing into the right atrium contracts, forcing blood into the right ventricle. The right ventricle contracts, forcing blood out of an artery. Well, where is that artery going? It's going to the lungs, isn't it? So it can be oxygenated. So we know that that is the pulmonary artery. So we have oxygenated blood here. Deoxygenated blood on the right-hand side. And then just compare. First of all, look at the valves. They sit here. You can imagine that they snap back, preventing backflow of blood. And then the last thing is to contemplate the thickness of the walls. Look at how much thicker the left ventricle wall is compared with the right ventricle. Remind ourselves, why is that? Because the left ventricle is pumping blood much further and a much higher pressure. By the way, I'm using Notability on an iPad to teach this, and it's changed my life. It's an amazing program. One of my students told me to use it. It's really, really good. It depends which exam board we're talking about for superior, inferior. That just, superior and inferior just tells you the position of the vessels, because you can see that there's quite a large amount to the vena cava, but I've never seen a question on it. Notability is the name of an app. Okay. So let's start. I think I'm going to get you guys on your pieces of paper. You need to work out all the different labels of the heart. So put 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and see if you can label the parts of the heart. Make sure you do that on your piece of paper. I was just saying that Notability is the name of the drawing app that I can get all these images onto. As Nardine said, it's literally spelled like that. Although I think it was quite expensive. Was it like £8?
Did you buy it?
I bought it. I actually spent money on it.
Just gonna stop where I was annotating.
Stop annotating my diagram. I still don't get how it does that. Is it free? I paid £8 for it. Okay, maybe another 20 seconds and I'll start going through it. Okay, number 1, that is the vena cava. Ooh. Number 2 is the right atrium. Number 3 looks like a string. It's supposed to be a valve, so that's the atrioventricular valve or the tricuspid valve. 4 is the right ventricle. 5, with that very thick wall, is the left ventricle. 6 is the left atrium. 7 is the pulmonary vein. And finally, 8 is the, penultimately, 8 is the aorta, and 9 is the pulmonary artery. Remember, tricuspid R is on the right-hand side. Okay, who got that all right? Yeah, good. Guys, do you see, I don't know if you guys struggled with labeling it, but is it helpful how I built it up from the box diagram and kind of taught you how to work it out, whether it was an artery or a vein, whether it was going to the lungs or away? It's all about not just looking at a diagram being like, oh, why is there so much on that diagram? I can't learn that. It's all about understanding the way in which the blood is flowing, whether it has oxygen or not. And you know, I can't draw, but the box thing really helps, because otherwise you end up just looking at these diagrams thinking, this is really difficult. Okay. On your piece of paper then, answer these questions for me. And well done, everyone. Okay, 10 more seconds. So, which part of the heart contains oxygenated blood? The left side. Which part of the heart receives blood from the lungs? Again, the left side, but it's the left atrium. Which part of the heart, crucially, receives blood from the rest of the body? That's the right atrium. Which parts of the heart pump blood into the ventricles? Well, that's both the left and right atria. Why do the ventricles have thicker walls than the atria? Well, it's all to do with how far that blood is being pumped. The ventricles pump the blood much further and at much higher pressure. It's important that you say both of these things. Oh, it's not working. And then why does the left ventricle have thicker walls than the right ventricle? Similar answer, you're pumping blood all around the body, whereas the right ventricle is just pumping to the lungs. So again, we need a higher pressure from the left ventricle. Okay, past exam question time. Okay, so explain how you know that X is the right side of the heart, and that's because the wall of chamber B is thinner than that of A. As we keep saying, that right ventricle, which is chamber B, has a much thinner wall than the wall of the left ventricle. Give the name of chamber A. I've already done that. I always end up doing this when I do my labeling. On the diagram, label the pulmonary artery. So remember that the pulmonary artery is taking deoxygenated blood away from the right side of the heart. So this is the right side. Here's the blood flow. So this here is the pulmonary artery. Explain the difference in the structure of the walls of chamber A and chamber B. We keep saying this. It's the fact that the left ventricle is pumping the blood much further and pumping at much higher pressure. I would honestly, though, draw the box, cut it out on a piece of paper and pop it on your body, and then you'll see left and right. Okay, let's just skip forward. I'm going to skip to this question. I like this question a lot. And so actually, I think it would be fun at this point for everyone to get involved and pop it on the messenger. Not yet. Don't ruin it for everyone. That sucks. Just decide what you think the letter should be for the first one. Don't press enter, otherwise we'll kick you out. And then I'll do a countdown. Okay, we're going to have to chuck you out. Can you please delete your message? Guys, should we just stop here? It doesn't work if you do it like this. I don't know how many times. I want you all to do it at the same time so everyone has a fair chance. So in 3 seconds, I want everyone to write their answer. 3, 2, 1. Yeah, well done everyone else, good. Okay, it's okay, Kate, I won't actually chuck you out. So the correct answer here is A, the chamber that pumps blood to the lungs is this one, because remember it's going to be carrying deoxygenated blood, and that blood is going to leave via the pulmonary artery and go off to the lungs. So again, let's do the chamber with the thickest muscle wall, and everyone hold fire and only press enter when I say. Okay, 3, 2, 1, go. Yay, full house. Very good, everyone. Very, very good. Okay, hold fire again, but this time we're looking for the blood vessel containing blood at the highest pressure. Okay, 3, 2, 1. Ooh, mixture. Okay, so we're looking for a blood vessel, and the answer here, because remember the highest pressure will be formed from the left ventricle contracting, and so therefore the answer here is E, because we're looking for a vessel. Well done to everyone who got that right, that's really hard. If the chamber had been the question, then the answer would have been H, but we were asked for a blood vessel. And then finally, again, hold fire, the blood vessel carrying blood with the least amount of oxygen to the heart. Three, two, one. Yeah, well done everyone, I got C. Brilliant. Yeah, we're looking for a blood vessel. Remember, that's the vena cava. It's carrying deoxygenated blood, heavy in carbon dioxide, and it's going to be returning that to the right atrium. Very, very good. How is everyone finding that? This is hard. I know it looks like you're only picking letters, but it involves an awful lot of knowledge and understanding to get to the point where you're picking either the correct blood vessel or the correct chamber. So yeah, is everyone happy with that understanding? Let's have some feedback. That was really fun. Yay, thank you for people who say it's fun, because it's science, so I know lots of people struggle. So yeah, well done. Yeah, it is tricky remembering the various names, but remember for me, pulmonary means to do with the lungs, cardiac means to do with the heart, renal means to do with the kidneys. So if you get renal failure, it means there's something wrong with your kidneys. Hepatic means to do with the liver. So when you have hepatitis, it means that yeah, well done, Daniel. When you have hepatitis, it means you have disease of the liver. So by understanding where all these words come from, what they mean, like atrium means entrance hall, then you'll understand that the blood enters the atrium and moves to the ventricles. So yeah, okay, I think that concludes everything I want to say because we're running out of time. Hope you found that super, super helpful. But yeah, it's really fun. I really enjoy it. So have a great day, everyone, and I'll see you soon. And yes, we do live together. Bye.